I decided I was going to revamp my entire, well, not entire, but a lot of my scrap organization because I was tired of not finding what I needed. I was trying to make some scrap quilts and I dig through things and I could never find the colors that I wanted or the fabrics I wanted. So I decided to revamp it. And I got the bright idea to do the system that I'm going to show you in a minute from watching a few different videos and also morphing some of the stuff I was already doing with some stuff that I saw in videos. One of them was Nikki from the Ruffled Purse. She rolls her fabric and we're going to talk about rolling the fabric in this video, but I'll link her video in the description below. I also have all this information on my blog, so you can check that out too. Let's get started on this organization system I came up with. And you can see here in the picture how pretty it is. I'm a visual person and I love having it all together. Well, almost all together, which I'll talk about. I'll talk about all of it. So I'm going to start by showing you how I organize my yardage. And this hasn't changed. Anytime I have a yard or more of fabric, I use comic book boards. These come in packs of 100, I think. They're really great. Their measurements are, I wrote them down because I knew I wouldn't remember. are 6 3/4 by 10.5 inches. And to use these for our fabric, we are going to wrap yardage. All right, so I have some yardage here, and this is exactly how it would come off of the bolt. So it is folded in half, salvage to salvage, and ready to go. So you're going to take the salvage edge and fold it up to the folded edge, just like that. Now, some people like to put the salvage on the outside. I personally don't because I like the look of it on the shelf with the fabric actually on the edges, but that's totally up to you. And then you just take your comic book board. You don't have to press this or anything. It'll lay flat. It's okay. And you roll it. And this is quite a bit of yardage, so it's going to take me a minute, but you just keep rolling. Straightening it out as you go. It works best if you're on a table, especially if you have quite a few yards. There's probably 4 or 5 yards here of this. Keep going like that. And then what I do here is I'll fold in, let's see where I'm at. Yes, I'm going to actually fold in quite a bit because I like to have the folded edge on the edge. And then I use some of these alligator clips, they're called. They're fabric clips. I'll put links to everything below and on my blog. And I just clip it inside. I don't clip it to the board. Some people do. I do not. I just clip the fabric. And then this goes on my shelf, just like that. So it looks like a mini bolt of fabric. I love this method because, again, I like the look, the aesthetic of having all my fabric out and being visible. I've gone through so many different ways of doing this, of organizing my fabric. I used to have it in these bins and I just couldn't, I wanted it all together. So this is going to allow for it to be all together. Now, the second thing I like to organize and keep separate from my regular scraps are half yards. I love the way it looks on the shelf, and I love that I have half yard cuts separate from my yardage and separate from my fat quarters, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and separate from my actual scraps. So let me show you how I do that. I take one of these comic book boards, can't talk, and I cut it in half. I'll put it long ways like this. I know that it is 10.5 this way, so I'm gonna do 5 1/4 this way. And I line it up just like I would fabric. And then I use a rotary cutter that I have specifically for cutting paper. And it usually just has an old blade in it. And this isn't right. Let me do this again. Let me line this up again. Almost had a miscut. So 5 1/4. And I make sure, just like with fabric, that it's lined up here and lined up here and cut. All right, and then I have half of those. So they measure, let me see, I have my notes. Well, we could just figure it out probably, but 5 1/4 by 6 3/4. So let me move this stuff out of the way. I'll show you what we do next with these. I got ready for this one. I have a half yard cut here. Isn't this pretty? This is from the Quilt Kit Company. Karen Tripp designed this, and it's awesome fabric. So I just take it and lay it out, and then I'll fold it in half like that. So I have my selvages down here at the end. It's not like it came off the bolt. And then I'll fold it again because I want the raw edges in there, and it should fit. Yep. So I don't bring the raw edges all the way down. I keep it just a little bit in, so they don't get all muddied up when they're on the shelf. And then I do the exact same thing. I roll it just like that, and then I'll fold this and I'll clip it with the clips. Now you can use pins, but you do get sometimes stabbed with the pins. And it looks so cute. It's like a little mini bolt of fabric. I love it. All right, let's move on to fat quarters. So for fat quarters, I do something a little bit different. This is a tulip pink. Isn't it pretty? I use these elastic, let me grab them, bands. They are hair bands, and there's, I think, I don't know, 1,500? Yeah, 1,500 in here. These work so well. Now, you can use pins, and when I started doing this, I was actually using pins. But again, I kept stabbing myself, and I also was worried about them rusting eventually, because I've seen that happen. But anyway, I use these. I love them. Fair warning, I don't know the long-term effect on the fabric with the little plastic pieces. I doubt it's much. It can't be much more than leaving them in plastic bins, right? Fair warning, I don't know what will happen. So keep that in mind. All right, so I'm gonna open this because they do get all over. They do tend to get on the floor and stuff because you can't see them because they're clear. We're gonna take our fat quarter. I'm gonna open this up. And a fat quarter is a 1/4 yard of fabric the fat way. So if you have a yard of fabric and you want a 1/4 yard, you're gonna get like a 44 by 9 inches long, so long and skinny. This is the fat way. It is, if you take a yard of fabric, it's a 1/4 of it. So there's 4 quarters. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So a fat quarter is 22 by 18 about. That 22 depends on the width of the fabric, because that can vary. And I'm throwing a bunch of math at you, but we're gonna get back to organizing fabric. So let's do that. So I just lay this out. Again, I'm not pressing anything. And then I'm gonna take the selvage edge or the shorter edge. So the long edge is here, shorter edges are here. We're gonna match up the shorter edges. And I'm gonna turn this around just like that. And I'll just hand or finger press. Then I turn these in just like that. And then fold the whole thing like this. And then starting at this end, I'll fold it in a little bit and I'll roll. And then I'll fold this in a little bit and roll, just like that. And that's my fat quarter. And then I put a band around it like that. And I'll stand it up in these containers. And I got these containers through Target. This is a blue fabric, so I'm gonna put it in with my blues. Let me grab that container now. Stick it in here, and this is getting pretty full, but that's okay. And then I don't put a lid on this. These do come with lids, but for the fat quarters, I just have them sitting on top. And I'm sure you're wondering, how do I handle the rest of the scraps? So let's get to it. Okay, so I grabbed the reds from my shelf just so you can see. Here are all the fat quarters, and here are my scraps, or at least some of them, which I'll show you in a minute. And I do the same thing, I roll the scraps, and I am gonna show you how I roll in real time, because I have been holding off on doing my pinks and purples for this very video. So this is my scraps, has a lid, but this isn't all of them. And part of my goal was to just see how much of each color I had. So hang on, let me show you. I'm gonna move these over. Here's my overflow bin. You can see it's blues and reds. All right, pardon the interruption, but I realized there are a few things that I did not mention that I wanna make sure that I'm clear on. I have 4 of these bins, though there are 4 of them, not just one. I know it sounds like I only have 1, but I have 4 overflow bins right now, and they're pretty full, so I might need to get more. The other thing comes later in the video when I talk about how I organize my smaller scraps, and I know the comment's gonna come up that people will say, well, I cut them all into certain size squares, and that's fine, that's great if that works for you. That does not work for me because of maintenance. I did do that for a very long time, and then I dreaded cutting down that pile. So the way I organize my small scraps, to me, makes a lot more sense because it's easy, it's quick, and after I'm done with a project, I can just easily get them out and processed. I don't have to worry about cutting them into certain size, remembering the sizes, storing the sizes, all of that. Also, I found I wasn't using them because I had 5-inch squares, but I maybe just needed a chunk and I didn't want to cut up the 5-inch square because the 5-inch square was already cut into a 5-inch square and I didn't want to ruin that. So I just found I wasn't using my scraps either. So the processing and the using of them just became a nightmare. Anyway, carry on with the video. I had extra. I had a lot of reds. So I did put them into this, And once I get all of these sorted and I know what I have, at that point I am gonna go through them and call out what I don't want or what I want to donate. And I got these containers at TJ Maxx. Again, visual person here. So if I don't see it, I'm not going to use it, and that's what it comes down to. So I'm going to put these reds away, and then I'm going to show you how I organize my pinks, which are back here in this big container, the old way of organizing them. All right, I have this big container here of all of my purples and pinks. As you can see, I have a lot. And you can also see why it's so difficult to find anything when I'm looking for it. I will show you how I do this, and I'll also show you what I do with the itty bitty pieces. And I'll talk about a mistake that I made as we get into it. So I'm gonna go through and sort this, and I'm not gonna show, of course, this whole bin, but I will fast forward the parts I can so you're not totally bored while I go through this. Let's do it. So I'm gonna first go through, and any piece that's really small, I'm gonna set aside. And any piece that doesn't belong in there, like this one I'd put with my grays, I'm gonna set that aside too. This looks like it's a fat quarter, so I'll do that. So I'm gonna just go through, see what I have here, and I'll find a good example of rolling for you. For right now, all of the pieces that aren't big enough to roll, or what I'm deeming is not big enough to roll, I'm gonna put back into this bin. And I promise we'll talk about what I'm gonna do with them here after we roll some of this fabric. We have a lot of work to do, but I promise it goes quickly. So I'm gonna show you how I do this, and I have some bigger pieces here. I'm just gonna check. They aren't half yards, they're like a quarter yard, which is my mistake. I should have been keeping them separate too, but I didn't. All right, so I'm gonna move this stuff just so you can see. I don't press anything, but I do like to have my raw edges in. So like for this one, and each one's different, it just depends on the piece. I'm gonna just fold this in half like that and roll. And I might roll, well, no, I don't even think I need to. And then I'll put an elastic on it, just like that. Now, as I'm going through, I might find half yards, and of course I'll put those on the boards, and I do keep my fat quarters separate. And I believe there were a couple fat quarters that I knew were fat quarters. I know these are fat quarters. Now, I do have pieces of leftover fat quarters of this print. So this has been a dilemma of mine. Do I keep them together or not? I'm not in this case because I like to have my fat quarters separate, because if I have a fat quarter quilt that I want to make, I want to have it easily accessible where I just grab it and go. All right, so I'm going to open this up. And if you don't know, you can always use a measuring tape here on the table. And this fat quarter looks to be going the other direction, which it is, but that's okay. We're just going to go with it. I fold in my sides and fold it in half, turn it around. Can you tell I've done this a few times? Fold this in. All right, I'm gonna get my pink bins down here so I can put it right into them. So there's my pink, and these are the scraps so far. Now I know I'm gonna overflow this container, but that's okay. So I'm just gonna do a few of these for you, different sizes. And I really do just kind of judge it by the piece. Like this one, I'll roll this way and put a rubber band around it. Let's grab another one. This one is long and skinny. So I'll just, let's see, how do I want to do it? That's what I'll do with this. I'll go that way. Yeah, it's a little on the small side, but that's okay. All right. And I know many are going to ask, but what about those ones that have hunks out of them? Let me see if I can find one. Okay, here, this one's kind of funky. It's just all cut up and everything. So I'll just do the best I can with it. Fold up the edges, fold this in half, and do that. So I'm gonna keep going and do all of these. I'll show you these at the end, and then I'll also talk about those bitty scraps that you can't really roll. All right, so now I have these all done. It's crazy the amount I have. They're not all gonna fit in here, so I am gonna have to use the overflow bin, but I am gonna put some of these in here and just get those put away. I just put these in here. Now the goal is to get rid of the overflow bins eventually and only have my scrap storage here. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but for right now, this is gonna work. Oh, by the way, I found 2 half-yard pieces. And if I have something that's 3/4 of a yard, they go into the half yard. All right, let's talk about those little scraps. So these scraps here are going to be my first to be used. because I'm done keeping scraps this small. I have done it for years and I have no desire to keep doing it. So what I do is I bought these mesh bags on Amazon and I am keeping them in this. This is my red one. I have empty ones. Let me grab them. This is going to be for my pinks. I'm thinking about putting a label of some sort. These are not expensive at all. I got 24 of them. They worked out to be 60 cents a piece, and they're really nice. They'd be great project bags too. So I'm just going to put these in here. Now I'll probably sort out my purples and pinks just because I have enough bags to do that. And it'll make it a little easier when I'm making some scrap quilts. Maybe I'll put something on the tag. I'll put the color. I don't know, but you can sort of see through them. So I'm going to sort through and get the pinks, put them in one bag, and the purples and put them in another. And then I will show you what I came up with. Okay, I have a lot of pink fabric. But it fits. And the purple. I just put it in there. I'm gonna have to press it anyway, so why not? I do know this, it's time to start really making some of those scrap quilts. And that's the purple. And I put these in a drawer. I'm going to grab them at some point and make some scrap quilts out of this. I love this system because it allows me to see what I have and it's going to allow me to use what I have. And that's the most important thing. I hope this helped you too organize your own scraps. I hope you have a great day. I hope you take some time to sew and I'll see you real soon. Bye.